Hello and welcome to another session of Faith and Honest Conversation. I'm Thomas Rowland. This is James. Hi, James. And we're here just to explore our experience of faith as honestly as we can and without judgment, I guess. So we're not telling you what you should think, what you should feel, what your experience should be. We're sharing ours, which will hopefully some of it you will share, hopefully some of it might resonate, but also will hopefully make it a bit more permissible for you to feel however you feel with your faith. So thank you for joining us. James, we finished last week on taboos and sex and avoiding talking about it by talking around it, which was great. I think it really highlighted the struggle we have talking about these things, and particularly when it comes to faith as well, and kind of meshing those, or how they interact and everything, and how they interact in a faith community as well. So we said we'd face it. We said we'd have a go this week. I think I must have been avoiding it because I've largely put that out of my head. So I've not done much prep about how we're going to talk about it. But yeah, we were just a book that I've read recently that we said might help frame this a bit more is Shameless, a Sexual Revolution by, let's get the name right, Nadia Bolz-Weber. Is that how you pronounce it, James?
Yeah, Bolz-Weber, yeah.
Which I think was really helpful for me to at least start to approach this in a different way, perhaps a more compassionate way. I remember one thing she said maybe early on in the chapters was that it could become like, which links back to what we were saying last week. I think it can become like this, the ideal Christian, let's say, because it is that she was talking from a Christian viewpoint and we're both from Christian backgrounds. The ideal Christian, what that looks like, kind of heterosexual, probably married, probably with 2 kids, maybe, I don't know, leading worship or leading in some capacity, attending church, probably white in most circumstances or in some cultures. It's kind of narrowing the circle of what it is to be circle. It's kind of making a circle, isn't it, of all that is, if you're in, or if you're successful, or if you're even liked by God, or kind of
creating that bounded set that we mentioned.
Yeah. And it's all, and I remember her saying that one conversation she had with a couple was they kind of got to this, and the couple said, and that circle has become so small. It's like that much people. And it really struck with me. I remember it really striking to me because I've lived fairly, I by chance, I think, I happily live in that circle, or I've happily met a lot of that tick sheet of that circle.
So met those criteria,
and known in that, I don't know, 10 years ago, whatever, like a bit of pride, a bit of like, I'm in the right place. I'm doing well. I'm a good Christian. And then being exposed to, and I also know I've been in a period with lockdown, been in a period that I've just naturally not been in churches. And so we're just kind of tentatively trying out different churches again. And I know how easily I could tick those boxes again.
And refit into that.
And refit in, like, and part of that is I grew up in churches. I know what's expected. I know how to fit in.
This is like playing regularly.
So that really struck in, like, I don't want to constrain myself in that circle, but also I think the circle's pretty harmful. And I've seen, I think in the last however many years, probably quite a while actually, I've suspected it. Like I've seen how harmful it can be and experienced it to some extent.
Yeah.
And it's kind of, or do I want to be in a place that perpetuates that? But that's my initial just thoughts along.
Yeah, I love it.
Along it, yeah.
I really like that. There are a few things that you said there that really resonated with me, and also that resonated before we started this call was you mentioned just a moment ago about feeling a sense of sort of pride about in the past of sort of hitting those criteria and being like that, almost like kind of idyllic poster person of Christianity, or of like what faith really looks like, and wow, this is a good, like what's the word, prosperous Christian existence. And it kind of like gave me like a little bit of a, I'm so happy that the LGBT movement of Pride is called Pride, because it's kind of going, hang on a sec, there shouldn't be shame around this. There shouldn't be shame around being who we are. And it kind of made me go, oh, that's really good. And I think that there's a lot of, I'm going to get all tangled with my words now. That also, when you mentioned Nadia's book and the fact it's called Shameless, and that we're talking and we're wanting to talk a bit about taboos, all of this, it all kind of goes hand in hand and is kind of intertwined with the concept of shame, with the concept of judgment, and not being right, not being right in and of ourselves, or something that we are isn't, and which is why it's a taboo. And there being sort of some sort of shameful aspect to us, or to what we do, or the way we live. I'm sure I was going to get somewhere with that. And and I suppose it kind of, it made me just pause for a second when you said pride, and made me go, oh, isn't it amazing that the Pride movement is called that? Because it kind of reclaims the fact that being in the LGBT community doesn't have to have shame surrounding it, doesn't have to be a shameful thing, and really shouldn't be a shameful thing, and really should be something that people are, do you know what, this is who I am, this is okay, this is acceptable, but like God accepts me, everybody else can accept me, and I accept me, and others accept me, and if you don't, then that's a you problem, not a me problem. And it just kind of really made me go, oh, that's really, really great. And the idea, when again, before we started, about shame, and just thinking about taboos, and just thinking about, okay, so what was there anything that wasn't okay for Jesus to talk about? And I really don't think there was. I think if you went up to him and you asked him anything, he would meet it completely accepting, in a complete mode of acceptance, and a mode of like, ultimately loving you first, and then like kind of coming and going, okay, well, why are we asking that? What is going on for you there? Yeah,
you don't get that picture of Jesus of skirting issues.
No,
he just meets them, doesn't he? Okay.
Like he answers what's behind the question so often, or like asks the question that's behind the question, and gets people to really look at themselves and each other. And really only seems to be frustrated at people creating bounded sets rather than anything else, So, well, you're out but you're in, or this makes you acceptable, but this doesn't. That's the only thing he really seems to be fighting against, at least as far as I can tell.
Yeah, I can follow you in that. I was just thinking, oh, like, have I actually? I don't know how much I've actually studied this to be able to say it definitively, but kind of, I'm always struck when I read like the Gospels, just that, like, you know, Jesus's biggest problem was with the religious, and I think all my life, not all my life, but the feeling I've had, the kind of underlying feeling I can have, or I had, was Jesus's biggest problem was with the world, or with, you know, the world, those outside of this bounded set that weren't my people, weren't and you know, like there were the real, you know, the real moment, like just lines of like Jesus for God to love the world that he sent Jesus, or Jesus will be the savior of the world, and even like forgive them for they don't know what they're doing. Like all of these sorts of things are kind of breaking apart that kind of distinction. And also I just, like, Jesus gets most annoyed at, and most fearsome, I think, like utterly like he just won't be compassionate when he's facing the Pharisees. Just like, I'm not budging. I like, and even he's provocative. Even's like, yeah, I'm going to push you. I'm going to push your buttons because I want to dismantle this. I think that has been a real eye opener for me when I've been thinking about these issues. It's just how much it is he goes out to the people, and he reaches out to the people most vulnerable and shamed by society.
That's exactly it.
And he confronts, and he, you know, he talks about hell when he's talking to the religious.
And almost talking to people in the way that they will understand, the terms they'll understand. So it's really interesting, isn't it? Like he, when they pull out that woman who they wanted to stone, and it's because she's like committing adultery. I think that's right, isn't it? And it just like you hear that story, you're just like, oh, that it's painful how misogynistic it is, and how like she is being blamed for something that it's like, you know, if you're really gonna like blame these people for being human, then ultimately they're both to blame for being human and just like wanting sexual pleasure, and then this whole sort of like idea that, well, she's in the wrong, so we're going to stone her. And the guy's almost, he becomes completely irrelevant. Like he's not even mentioned, and I'm like, man alive, that's so wrong.
It feels like such a setup, doesn't it? Of like all these men wanting to feel good about themselves.
Let's pick on this weak person, this person who we've got power over. That she's not weak, but that they've got power over, and so she's weakened by their power, or weakened by their status.
And it's a like a political play, isn't it? It's like, what are you going to do with this, Jesus? That's what it's about. It's not about, they don't care about the woman, they don't care about anything.
They're using her as a tool, and it's just so just horrible and kind of like depraved, the way that story's portrayed. And you're just like, man, how similar I see things in the church nowadays, and I'm just like, so it's just like we haven't learned. It's like we haven't learned anything. And like, man alive, you know, I look at this new law that's come up in Texas nowadays, just in recent, I think it was last week or the week before, and it just blew my mind that that's come from like a religious perspective, or at least pseudo-religious, spiritual perspective of like every life is sacred or pro-life and so on, and how like it just kind of makes it just doesn't make sense. There's so much hypocrisy and so much like it's just picking on people and in society who are already in a position where they're vulnerable, in a position where they're like maybe not feeling their most powerful, and it's just reducing them more. It's reducing them further. Yeah, so it's.
Can you tell me what the law is? I feel like I've heard rumblings of it, but I don't know the
Sorry,
internet.
I just went off on one on that.
No, it's great. I don't mind.
So there was a lot of bill that was passed in Texas a short while ago regarding abortion, and it's this unilateral law which allows any citizen to sue any person who's had an abortion or has been suspected of having an abortion after 6 weeks of pregnancy. So, and then that citizen is eligible to win $10,000 from a successful litigation case, which effectively puts a bounty on people who've.
That's exactly what I felt then.
Yeah. And then you're just like, are we living in a dystopian like world here? What is this post-apocalyptic? What's happening here? And yeah, it's just mind-blowing, absolutely mind-blowing that the people who will pass that bill don't care about people who are homeless, don't care about the women there, and don't care about mental health or physical health, because they're pro sort of like insurance fees for healthcare and that sort of stuff, and not pro sort of universal healthcare, and yet they will brand themselves pro-life, and you're like, it's just like a hypocrite. Mind-blowingly hypocritical. That's like me massively soapboxing.
Yeah, and I think so. I think I've come across in like social media some of the rumblings of that, like and saying what you're saying, and and maybe looking at how the history of this pro-life movement started and how it's a change. I think it was 60s or something from what was the evangelical line of when life began, and how politicized that all was, and power gaining. And it is, it makes me feel really sad, but torn up and confused, I think, all in together. And I can hear like ghosts from my past of kind of like, oh, you shouldn't be listening to all this, and you should be pro-life. And there was also one bit, wasn't there? This is, again, I'm just on my soapbox. It's quite nice up here, so
it's fun, isn't it?
It's fun, yeah. But just how the unborn are the perfect people to fight the rights of, because they don't
have a voice.
They don't have a voice. And they can't tell you what they want, or they can't,
and you can put anything you want on them.
Onto them, and the fact that all of that, so and I think I found it confusing, if I'm honest, like how I think as I've become aware, and still are becoming aware, I think it's maybe a journey I'm on of kind of where I once trusted conservative evangelicalism. It's been confusing knowing, okay, what do I trust in all this?
And
what's true, you know, what is spin, or what is
Yeah.
what is not. And yet just like seeing the parallels of what I'm reading in the Gospels and what seems to be happening now.
Yeah. I suppose just to sort of kind of like pick up on a phrase you said there, like the conservative evangelical approach, it has these very, very black and white laws or rules or structures in place that make it feel quite safe. Particularly, well, if you're on one side of those those lines, that you're like, oh, this is a good place to be. I'm saved. I'm like chosen, elect. All of those words, and then it kind of makes it, yeah. You can feel. I suppose there's a sense of comfort or a sense of like. Yeah, you know, I've done it. I've achieved. I've arrived. I'm, you know, home. Which is, it's not wrong to feel those things, because I think they're all things that we crave, and I think they're all things we need as humans. Is a sense of belonging and a sense of being a part of something, and a sense of like being significant in some way. But the issue is then, it's to the detriment of others, and it is like the sense of belonging, because you're not one who does not belong. It's you're marked by what you're not, rather than by what you are, or as much as by what you're not as by what you are. Which yeah, is me being as kind of gentle as I can be with regards to it, because I'm aware that yeah, that I suppose that a lot of people who I know, and this has been really fascinating the last little while, a lot of people who I know are still in that place, and there are a lot of people who I know and love who are still very much entrenched in those viewpoints, and I don't even know how to approach a conversation, or whether I should approach a conversation about any of those things. But just know that my own perspective is utterly different and utterly shifted and out of that place, and all that is in me wants to tear down all of those rules and all of those lines, and make and bring ruin to the place where shame is born. And the sense of feeling really powerless in the face of it, because it feels such a monumental structure that we're against. Yeah, I don't know, that, and it kind of drifted away from.
No, we're circling again. We're circling. But I think for me, this is perhaps part of the necessary preamble.
Yeah,
like,
I think so.
These are all the sorts of stuff maybe that goes on for me as I approach these things. So maybe it's good to circle for a bit and clear the way a bit. And I'm just thinking that it's linked to taboos, though. Like what, like yeah, I mean, you feeling it hard to challenge.
Yeah,
is all linked to the, like, a lot of these things.
Shame revolving,
yeah,
because it's so strong. It projects it so strongly.
Yeah, and there's such a shame around. Can I even question this?
Yeah.
Or can I? Yeah, like it's almost like suddenly you're in the bad camp, or suddenly, you know, like suddenly you've lost all faith and trust, and you know, and that's just a mechanism for control, really, isn't it? It's just
and I think so. Yeah, I think you're right.
And so how do you approach talking about taboos, whatever they are, in an open way,
Yeah.
in an explorative way? Even that attempt seems unsafe
Yeah.
for some people.